I ride the empty miles the way a man rides his own shadow. Quiet, steady, not asking it to hurry. The prairie breathes slow, and the wind smells of dust and wheat. I keep my hat low. I keep my thoughts lower. Out here, a trail strips you down to what won't leave. A name, a debt, a promise. I carry all three under the ribs where no doctor can reach. My name's Jack Harlo. The debt was a man's kindness and his daughter's brave hands. The promise was heavy as wet rope. Come harvest, I'd see to the Hart place. I put distance on it, thinking miles might lighten the load. They didn't. Nights, I heard wheat talking, soft, relentless, and woke with my palms aching as if a scythe had swung them to blisters. A vow doesn't fade, it tightens. There's a scar at my side where a bullet learned my name. That scar is my compass. It tugs north when I lie, east when I drink, and straight home when a soul is due to pay. Lately, it pointed at Montana like a stubborn finger. I kept to the cottonwoods and little rivers. Now and then a wagon passed west and left me its dust. Maybe I didn't belong to any of it, but my horse kept moving. At noon I watered the gelding and looked into the creek. The water showed my face, sun-bled eyes, wind-burned skin, a beard I meant to shave a town back. A man can outrun many things. His reflection keeps pace. I thought of Elias Hart, doorway, lit amber by harvest. He'd taken me in one winter when the snow came like a verdict. He said a ranch is a promise a man makes to the ground and repeats every morning till he dies. The words hovered in my coat like heat. Back then his girl was just Evelyn. Braids, a quiet mouth, a gaze that sifted truth from chaff. She wasn't mine to notice. I noticed anyway, like a thirsty man notices rain pinned far on the horizon. Respect kept the rain short. I never told them why I drifted. The past can outrun any horse. Mine wore a badge one season, a gambler's grin the next, and once it wore my own face when I did harm that needed naming. I promised Elias I'd square it by harvest. He believed me. That belief branded deeper than iron. Toward evening, wheat country opening like a book with gold pages. My chest tightened in that good, aching way, the body's memory of work not yet done. I could hear the shh, shh of a scythe, though no one was in sight. I rode the fence line, wire, cedar posts, then old split rails where the ground turned stubborn. A mile more, and I'd be at the north field, too big for one set of hands and a prayer. Clouds lifted their purple hems and the sun slipped under. At the last crest, I reined in. Below, a single figure moved through the wheat, small as a candle in a cathedral, steady as a heartbeat. The scythe flashed, fell, rose, fell again. The rows behind her were straight and heartbreakingly few. The wind carried the sound of breath held too long. I waited, hat in hand. Some moments you meet the way you meet a grave. Head bowed, no words to spare. My horse took a step, then another, and I let him. A promise was pulling us by the bridle. The first honest tug I'd followed in years. When she straightened and pressed a hand to her back, the light made a halo of loose hair. Evelyn. Her name thumped once in my chest like a hammer finding a nail. I touched the scar, drew a breath, and started down slow, as if the earth might spook. By the time she heard the creak of leather and turned, I'd already decided. I wasn't there for pay. I wasn't there for forgiveness. I was there because a man once fed me winter and taught me the sound of a vow with both hands in the dirt. And because the field was too big for one lonely soul to finish before the storms. She didn't speak when I reached her, just leaned on that scythe, breath trembling, eyes narrowed against the glare. I could see she was near the end of herself. Wheat clung to her dress, sweat darkened the cloth, and the sun was a cruel overseer. I said I'd finish it, she murmured, voice raw, not to me but to the wind. I said I'd finish it for him. I tied my reins to a fence post, stepped into the rows. The ground was hot enough to hum. Then let me keep you from breaking first, I said. Your pa once saved me a winter. Guess I owe him this much. She straightened slow, looking me over like a ghost she half remembered. Jack Harlo, she said finally. Pa said you were trouble. Most men worth remembering are, I answered. Something softened in her face. Just a flicker, and she handed me the scythe. Then trouble go on. The north fields waiting. I took that old handle in both hands, the wood still warm from her grip. When I swung, the sound filled the air like a sigh. Shh, shh, shh. The music of work and penance. I'd forgotten how it felt. The body finding its rhythm. The wheat falling in neat surrender. We worked till the horizon bled out its color. She stacked. I cut. Sweat turned to salt on our skin. Now and then she'd hum a hymn, soft as memory. I didn't speak much. The scythe said all that needed saying. When the sun dropped, we sat on the wagon tongue, eating cold beans from a tin. She kept her eyes on the stubble fields, not on me. Pa said you had debts in 3 counties, she said. I nodded. Paid some, fled some. The worst was the one owed to him. She turned the tin in her hands. He died believing you'd make it right. Then I best not prove him a liar. The quiet stretched between us. Cicadas started their song, that low, steady reminder that life don't quit singing, no matter who's gone. After a while, she spoke again, voice smaller. The bank's coming for the land. Said if I don't deliver the wheat by end of month, they'll take what's left. I don't sleep much thinking about it. That why you been out here alone? She gave a short laugh that wasn't joy. Out here the only thing that listens is the wind, and it don't talk back. I looked over the field, patches cut, more still standing, tall as pride. Ain't no shame in needing a hand, I said, only shame's in refusing one. She didn't answer, just stared west, where the last light clung to the hills. Then she said, tomorrow, the storm will roll from those clouds. Always does this time of year. Then we best finish before it does. That night, I slept in the barn. The roof leaked, mice scurried in the hay, and the smell of horses brought old memories riding in close. I remembered Elias Hart's laugh, low and steady, the kind that could calm a storm. He told me once that a man's worth ain't weighed by silver or acres, but by how many lives he keeps from sinking. I let that truth rust in me for too long. The rain began sometime near dawn, first as a whisper, then as a curse. I rose, boots already wet, and found her out there again, dress clinging, arms working that scythe like she could cut the storm itself. Evelyn, I shouted, running to her, you'll drown before you finish. She turned hair plaster to her face. Then let me drown trying. Her voice cut sharper than the rain. I grabbed the scythe, wrestled it from her hands. No, I said, if he were here, he'd tell you. No crop's worth a broken soul. She sagged against me, breath hitching. For the first time, I felt her strength falter. I held her there, just long enough for her to know she wasn't alone anymore. The storm raged all day, tearing shingles, flattening wheat. We watched from the barn door, silent, hearts thudding in the same slow rhythm, and when the worst passed, she whispered, "If we lose the field, we lose everything." I laid a hand over hers. Then we start again. Ground don't hold grudges, it just waits. Outside, thunder rolled away into distance. The air smelled like mercy. The next morning, the storm left the world half ruined, half born again. The wheat stood twisted, beaten, shining wet like wounded gold. Evelyn and I walked the edges in silence, boots sinking deep into the soaked soil. She knelt, ran her hand through the stalks that still stood. "It's not all lost," she whispered, "just enough to hurt." I looked out toward the north ridge, where a lone rider kicked up a dark tail of dust. "Hurt's got company," I said. "That's Blackwood's man. Bank likes to send him early when they smell fear." She didn't flinch, just rose slow. "Then we best show him there's none here." By the time he reached us, the mud had dried to a crust. He was a tall man, dressed clean, eyes like coin silver. "Miss Hart," he said, polite but sharp, "Mr. Blackwood wishes to remind you the note's due in a month. He hears the storm took your field. Unfortunate." I wiped my hands on my coat and stepped forward. "You tell Blackwood the storm didn't take her field. It only washed the dust off." He looked at me like a man looks at a riddle he don't fancy solving. "And you are?" "Just the help," I said, smiling the kind of smile that keeps a man's hand near his holster. He tipped his hat, but not out of respect. "Then help her pack when the time comes." And with that, he turned his horse and left the way he came, smug as thunder after lightning. Evelyn's shoulders sagged once he was gone. "He'll come back with papers," she said. "They always do. Then we'll give him something to read." We worked from dawn till the moon showed itself thin and white. I fixed the scythe handle, sharpened the blade, and we cut until the night swallowed the field whole. When the muscle screamed, I reminded myself that pain's just the body's way of confessing it's alive. 3 days later, neighbors came. Johnson, Peterson, even the old widow from the next hollow. They brought hands, tools, and faith enough to fill the sky. I didn't ask. Evelyn hadn't either. Some promises echo louder than words. By week's end, the last of the wheat lay bound and waiting. The barn brimmed golden as sunrise. Evelyn stood in the doorway, eyes glistening with sweat or tears. I couldn't tell which. "It's done," she whispered. I nodded, too tired to speak, but inside, something loosened. A man carries guilt like a stone in his boot. You forget it's there till you take a step without it. Next morning, we hauled the grain to Helena. The millman sniffed, said the wheat was clean and fine, paid full price, cash on the barrelhead. Evelyn's hand shook as she folded the bills into her coat. "That's the sound of a debt dying," I told her. But when we got back, Blackwood was waiting. He'd come himself this time. Slick boots, smug eyes, a lawman smile with no law behind it. "Miss Hart," he said, holding a paper, "seems your father signed this note with a clause allows the bank to adjust interest after harvest if conditions are favorable." He paused, grinning. "Conditions are indeed favorable." Evelyn read the words, color draining from her face. "That's theft," she said. He shrugged. "That's business." I stepped closer, felt the old weight of my colt resting quiet at my side. "Funny kind of business that needs a gun to protect it when I..." He smirked. "Funny kind of man that thinks threats can change paper." For a long breath, the air held still. Then Evelyn said, "No, but..." Truth can. She disappeared into the house, came back with a folded survey map, her father's, lines drawn by his own hand. The fence you built crosses my land, Blackwood. That clause ain't worth the ink if you're trespassing. He blinked, faltered just long enough for the world to tilt back in our favor. I took the paper from his hand, tore it once, slow. This land's paid, I said in sweat, in wheat, and in a promise kept. He stared at me, jaw tight. Then he turned his horse, without a word, dust rising behind him like a bad memory leaving town. Evelyn stood there, breathing hard, the map still trembling in her grip. "We did it," she said softly. "Pa would have smiled." I looked at the field beyond, the stubble shining pale under the sun, the horizon clean again. "He ain't gone, Evelyn. He's in every stalk that refused to fall." That night, we sat on the porch while crickets tuned the dark. She poured coffee. I took it with both hands. For the first time in a long while, the silence didn't ache, and somewhere inside me, the past, mean and loud and stubborn, finally stopped riding my trail. Days slowed after that. The wheat was gone from the fields, but its ghost stayed in the air, sweet, dry like memory itself. Evelyn stacked the last sacks in the barn, wiped her hands on her apron, and turned to me with that half smile she learned from her father. "I reckon you're leaving soon," she said. I looked out across the land. The stubble glimmered under morning frost, and a flock of crows wheeled above the fence line like they were keeping count of the living. "I've thought about it," I said, "but thinking ain't the same as leaving." She leaned against the post. "You done what you came for. Debt's paid." I shook my head slow. "Not all debts measure in coin or sweat, Evelyn. Some get paid and staying put when the easy thing's riding away." She studied me, eyes softer than they'd been in weeks. "You talk like a man who's tired of running." "I am," I said. "Been running half my life from things that don't even chase me no more." The wind kicked up a whisper through the grass, and somewhere a door banged loose. I remembered all the miles behind me, lonely miles, miles that burned, miles that sang. A man starts to think the road is home, till he finds a porch that feels quieter than all the trails combined. That night, we sat by the fire. The storm lantern cast a warm circle of light between us. She stitched a torn sleeve. I oiled the scythe blade, though there was no more to cut. "Pa used to say the land don't owe us mercy, she said. "We take what it gives and give back double." "He was right," I murmured. "Only thing he left out is sometimes the land gives us people too." She smiled, small and shy, and the room held that kind of peace that don't need talking. Later I rode to the North Ridge alone, just to see the line of it under moonlight. The ground was solid again, the fences straight, the work finished. I knelt, pressed my palm to the dirt, and felt the hum of life below. "Elias," I whispered, "oh, you were right about her. She's got more steel than the plow that turned this field." For a while I stayed there, listening to the wind rustle what little wheat the storm had spared. It sounded like forgiveness, low, patient, endless. When I came back, she was on the porch with 2 mugs of coffee. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Didn't want to, I said, taking a seat beside her. We watched the stars fade into dawn, the sky bleeding pink over the barn roof. And in that half-light, something in me settled. The years of drifting, the weight of names and mistakes, they all felt smaller than her hand resting near mine. After breakfast, the Johnsons came to help mend the roof. Laughter rolled across the yard. easy and bright. Evelyn moved through it like sunlight, giving orders, passing nails, her braid catching the light. One of the men nudged me. "You sticking around, Harlo?" I smiled. "Guess the land still needs work." He grinned, saw through me. "Or maybe the woman does." Didn't argue. Some truths don't need defending. When the day ended, we stood where the fence meets the road. "You could build here," she said quietly. "There's room by the creek. Only if you'll have me built in beside you." Her eyes lifted to mine, steady and sure. I wouldn't ask otherwise. The next weeks passed in a kind of gentle labor, mending tools, sowing winter seed, clearing the flooded ditch. Work with her had a rhythm like breath, two hearts finding the same beat after years out of tune. One evening, the sun slipped down gold behind the barn, painting everything in firelight. She turned to me and said, "Jack, thank you for keeping your promise." I took her hands, rough and scarred and beautiful. "Your pa gave me reason to be a better man. You gave me a place to prove it." We stood there, quiet, the wind sliding soft across the stubble, the sky turning the color of forgiveness. And for the first time since I could remember, I felt at home. Winter crept in gentle that year, the kind that doesn't bite but hums low in the bones. The field slept under a thin veil of frost, and the air carried that clean silence that comes only when the land's at peace. Evelyn kept the hearth bright, her laugh mingling with the crackle of pine wood. Sometimes, when I'd come in from the barn, I'd just stand in the doorway and watch her. She moved through the house like she'd been born from its timbers, steady, sure, unafraid of ghosts. We didn't talk much about the harvest anymore. It lived in our muscles, in the ache that had softened into pride. Some nights, I'd still wake before dawn, reach for the scythe handle just to feel its smooth curve, then smile when I remembered there was no need. Life found its rhythm. Fences mended, coffee brewed, letters sent to neighbors who'd helped. And every Sunday, I'd ride to the ridge, sit by Elias Hart's grave, and tell him what he left behind. A daughter strong as oak, a farm that refused to die, and a drifter who finally learned to stay. I'd talk quiet, not expecting an answer, but the wind always answered anyway, moving through the wheat stubble like a hymn. Sometimes Evelyn came with me, bringing wildflowers or the last of the summer wheat bound in twine. She'd set them down, brush the dirt from her skirts, and say, "Pa, we're doing just fine." Then she'd slip her arm through mine, and we'd walk back slow. The neighbors still told the story, how the Hart girl and the wanderer beat the storm, and the banker, how they turned loss into gold. But for us, it wasn't about the telling. It was about the quiet that followed, the kind that fills a man instead of hollowing him out. One evening, after supper, I stepped onto the porch. The sky was heavy with stars, 1,000 lanterns strung across eternity. Evelyn came beside me, leaned her head on my shoulder. "Funny," she said, "I used to think home was a place. Turns out it's just the one person who makes you stop wandering." I let the word settle. Maybe so. Or maybe home's what happens when two wanderers stop running in the same direction. She smiled at that, small and certain. We stood there long after the fire inside went to embers, long after the crickets quieted down. The kind of silence that don't ask for anything, it just is. The years will keep turning, storms will come, banks will rise and fall, fences will rot and be built again. But this piece of land, this breath of peace, it's ours now. paid for with work and sorrow, and a love that learned how to stay soft even after it's been cut to the root. If you ride by someday and see the Jack Harlo sign swaying gentle in the wind, you'll know this. Promises can outlive the men who made 'em if someone's willing to finish the field. And maybe love ain't about holding on, it's about learning to let go gentle.